Hi, welcome to our talk. Today we're going to be talking about TLS for everything in Cloud Foundry. I'm Miki Mokrysz. I work for EngineerBetter, a cloud native consultancy, and with me is Patrick Lowin from SAP. Today, as I say, we're talking about finishing off getting everything in Cloud Foundry to be encrypted over the network. So first question, why does TLS matter? Why does encryption matter? If you go back, even just say 5 years, encryption online was still only used for things like banks a lot of the time. That's completely changed. Various developments, both with like hardware accelerated encryption and with like breaches that have been discovered, means that encrypting network traffic is now expected pretty much everywhere as like a fairly efficient, sensible way to prevent problems. So TLS is what we're using for encryption in Cloud Foundry. TLS is both encryption, i.e. like somebody else on the network can't read the data, and authentication. So you can be sure that you're talking to the server that you think you are. So what's needed? Why does this matter for Cloud Foundry? So as I say, we expect everything to be encrypted. Cloud Foundry shouldn't be communicating in plain text, but in CF deployment, a lot of connections had to be converted to TLS. Because Cloud Foundry has been around for quite a few years now, it was using plain text to start with. A lot of this work has already been done, but there's still things left to do that have been tracked by this useful GitHub issue if you want to read a bit more later. So where we come into the picture is something called NATs. It's a distributed message queue used within Cloud Foundry. In particular, it's used to keep the routing working, to tell GoRouter which URLs can be routed into Cloud Foundry. So when you run a new app or when you run a new component, GoRouter knows that it can forward traffic to it. And the list of those routes is passed through this NATs component. So VMware have already done some of this encryption work. They've encrypted the connections from route emitter to NATs and from route registrar to NATs. But right now, in open source Cloud Foundry, GoRouter talks to NATs over plain text. This isn't like user data. This isn't a like terrible breach. What's in there is things like the names of all the host names used within Cloud Foundry. So, you know, it's not critical, but there's compliance advantages to not having to explain why this doesn't matter. And it is a basic expectation now to have everything encrypted. So contributing to Cloud Foundry is quite approachable. It was only something like a week of really active development work to get these 3 pull requests in. And the reason we're talking about it is that more organizations are going to need to get comfortable contributing to issues like this one. As many of you will be aware, Cloud Foundry has entered more of a maintenance mode at this point. So, you know, it's still updated, it's still secure, it's still widely used. And if like, there's still quite a lot of growth going on in terms of apps running on it. However, more organizations need to get comfortable maintaining Cloud Foundry, and that's why we think this needs to be talked about. So you might wonder what's next. Like, what can you do to help? So there's 3 big things for this topic that could do with contributions. So one of them is this NATs component we're talking about. Just disable the ability to communicate with it in plain text. We're planning to contribute this. It will simplify some nasty kind of clustering issues that people have occasionally seen. The next issue is using TLS, something called routing API. This is worth tackling if you depend on TCP routing. That one's quite easy to tackle. I've actually got a few commits on that issue that you'd be able to pick up and develop further to get the issue addressed. The final issue is to do with app-to-app internal networking. This one's challenging. You need to figure out how to encrypt connections between servers. However, since this is traffic between apps, it is potentially quite sensitive, and encrypting this is really worth doing. But now I'm going to hand over to Patrick to talk more about SAP's routing plans for Cloud Foundry. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks a lot, Mikey, for sharing your insights of your journey towards encrypting the routing path between GoRouter and NUTS. My name is Patrick, and also a warm welcome from my side. I'm working in the Cloud Foundry routing and networking team on SAP side, and I'd like to share some routing requirements and features we support, as well as our next steps for the TLS track. To talk about TLS for NUTS and GoRouter, I'd like to share some more details of the current architecture. So on each NUTS VM, there are actually two jobs running which are important. This is the unencrypted non-TLS NUTS job and the NUTS TLS job. After Mikey's PR is merged, the traffic towards GoRouter as a subscriber will no longer be HTTP plaintext, but it will be encrypted, connecting to the NUTS TLS job as well. At the current point, several root registrars or root registrar implementers like Cloud Controller and UAA are already talking towards the NUTS TLS job, and it's the same for Diego cells. However, in certain scenarios, they might be falling back to the unencrypted NUTS server, and to prevent this, it would be very beneficial getting rid of the unencrypted NUTS jobs. And this is also what we intend to contribute within this year. And we want to have a configuration option to only have the NUTS cluster consisting of NUTS TLS nodes. So a VM will then only host the NUTS TLS job, and we get rid of the NUTS job. Besides TLS for everything and other security and compliance features, we also support some other features on SAP side. To achieve this, we also have a slightly different architecture in the routing stack. So in front of the GoRouter, we have an HA proxy, which is terminating the TLS handshake towards the client. And our team is also responsible for the HA proxy Bosch release or open source component. If you have questions there, you can always reach out to us. And with this HA proxy, we achieve quite some features. One example is embargo blocking, which means that there's a central service in SAP defining which countries we don't want to have traffic with. And this is a list of IPs which is regularly updated. And in HA proxy, we have a sidecar deployed, which is consuming this list and then updating the configuration as well as restarting the processes via sockets. Aside from this embargo blocking, another example is custom domains. So since some years, we support custom domains, have a self-service for customers to define their trust CAs and also upload their certificates, and we deploy them in HA proxy. Previously, this was done via Bosch redeploys, which had quite some drawbacks. And in the recent past, our team worked on dynamic configuration reloads and also have a sidecar for the certificate updates and also do dynamic configuration reloads and keep processes running to also allow clients to have long-running connections. As Mikey mentioned, we also have container-to-container networking not supported in SAP. That's simply due to the landscape size. So this would not scale, and also each app could only have a very limited set of internal routes with C2C. Still, our customers have the requirement to not expose applications to the internet, and that's why our team just built a private URL feature, which allows app developers to push an app to a private URL, which is only accessible from within the landscape, and this and to let apps not be exposed to the internet. Also in the morning, there was a talk about HTTP2 support. VMware is heavily working on it. They are currently supporting, or they are about to support the path towards the Go router from the client. We already can maybe get some performance impact there. And we would also be very happy to try this out. And also our clients are always asking for gRPC support, which relies on HTTP2. So the missing parts in the HTTP2 track from Go router to the Envoy and Diego cells, we would be very happy if this could also be taken care of. Of course, we support a lot of more features, but I just chose some for this talk. Thanks a lot for joining, and I'm happy to meet you in Q&A or on the Cloud Foundry public Slack channel or via private message on the Cloud Foundry Slack. Thanks a lot again, and bye-bye.
So as you guys you know from the talk, I'm Mikey and Patrick's Patrick. Happy to answer any questions about the work we've been doing.
Actually, there's already one from Amelia. Currently, some users are using IPsec to encrypt their internal traffic. Can you go into more detail about the problem with IPsec and why it is important to encrypt the internal traffic without it? You want to go, Mikey?
Sure. So I can't talk about this one for SAP, but I can talk about it for UK government, where I used to be. So IPsec is a bit frustrating right now because the Bosch release has been deprecated. So like there isn't a supported way of doing it. When it was supported, it was like a fairly sensible way of doing it. But we're now in a situation where like you kind of have to have that traffic unencrypted, which you want to move away from. And it's a really nasty situation to be in where like traffic between end user apps is in plain text when like a lot of the uses for internal networking are to have like back-end apps that are nicely secured. So it would be really great to like secure that as well. And hi, Stefan as well.
Yeah, maybe while waiting, Mikey, we could talk about what you have been done recently between taking the video and now.
Yeah, so we've moved on a bit. So NAT's to-go router TLS is now in the latest version of CF deployment, which is wonderful. We've been moving on to looking at getting rid of non-TLS NATs altogether. We can't quite promise that we'll get this delivered, but like we're working on it at the moment. And this would be wonderful because it would take one of the like largest remaining non-TLS things away from Cloud Foundry.
Also happy to get support, like you said in the talk.
Yeah. Thanks to Amelia for a lot of the stuff. You've been kind of the one person helping us actually make progress rather than like having to spend days rediscovering things. So thanks a lot. So I've been working with SAP for about 2 months now. And before that, I was working in UK government on their Cloud Foundry. For a long time, I'd been frustrated that these NATS interactions were plain text. And then I joined SAP and they had me fix it. And that's been quite fun.
Fun fact is even that you commented on the issue very early before joining us. So there's proof for what you said.
People were linking the issues where like the second comment was mine and things. That was quite entertaining.
Amelia, container-to-container traffic is not always TCP. How are you thinking about encrypting it? Oh, I think we did not think about container-to-container at all, as we do not support it.
I think this is perhaps more of a community question than an SAP specific one. I don't know yet, honestly. I'd love to like have an answer. And honestly, the answer may be making IPsec part of CF deployment officially, but I think we're more or less out of time. I don't think this is a like quick pull request. I think this is more of a like a team is going to need to focus on this question. Cool. Well, that's all we've got time for, I guess.
All right. Thanks for joining and have a good rest of the day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.